So can everybody hear me? Perfect.
Yes.
So my name is Brian Wright, and I am the principal of Town Planning and Urban Design Collaborative. We are the team that are working on your comprehensive plan to help you all figure out the future for your city, what you want to see, to help you get ideas out of your head and onto the page to write the story of the future of Spartanburg. So we have today several different meetings with different topics. This meeting is transportation related, and I'm going to talk about how people move around the city. Because it is a small group, which these meetings tend to be, anybody who wants to turn on their camera, I would encourage you to do so we can really be collaborative together today. It's just always easier to look at each other while we're talking, but don't feel like you have to. I know sometimes it's early in the morning, and if I don't have to get up and turn on a camera and have people look at my face, I'm happy to not. So so the format of this meeting today is really just a discussion. It's a conversation, and I am here to learn from all of you. I am not from there. I'm from Nashville, and originally from Birmingham, Alabama. And I'll never know Spartanburg the way that you all do. We will be learning a lot about Spartanburg because we're studying and doing research and looking at the data. And so there may be some things that we learn about Spartanburg that are going to be new information for you, and so that's good. But the really important things about Spartanburg are just really from your experiences there, and what it's like to live and work and just be part of that community. So I have with me as well Chris. If you can see Chris, wave everybody. Chris is a transportation engineer, so he focuses on moving people around the city. I have Becky Timmons as well. Becky's there. She's part of my team. She's the project manager for this. And then we've got some other folks on there. All the new folks that are popping in, I've offered for anyone who wants to turn on their camera so we can see you and engage with you better. But if you don't want to, that's okay. It's a bit early, I understand. I see we also have Jara on the call. Jara is part of the team. He is part of City Explained, and Jara and his partner Matt will be looking at the data and really getting into the understanding of infrastructure needs and those sorts of things. We also have Chauncey Lundy. Chauncey is part of our team. Hey, Chauncey. Chauncey is an engineer and planner focused on, for us, it's going to be focused on making sure, since equity is the cornerstone or the foundation of this whole plan, that all the things we're talking about get filtered through the lens of equity. Chauncey's out of Washington, D.C., and gets to do a lot of cool projects there. And me and the rest of my team and my sub-consultants all work all over the country. And so we get to see neat things that people are doing that we can share with you. We get to also see things that people do that don't work well. So we'll make sure we try to steer clear of those for you. But at the end of the day, this is your plan. It's not our plan. And we are really here just to listen to you and help figure out, using our professional expertise, how do we help you all write the plan that you want. So got a little bit of, got a couple of slides here. I'm just going to run through real fast. I'm going to try to share my screen, and then it's like 4 or 5 slides. It's not much at all, so don't worry. Last night I talked. How many people were at the opening kickoff meeting last night? We have a few there. Okay, great. Well, I talked for a long time. So it's part of the thing I've realized when I'm on Zoom is I talk longer than I mean to, so I apologize. Let's see, here we go. I'm gonna click present. I'm gonna share my screen first. Can you see my screen now? All right. So, as I said, this is about transportation. Lots go into transportation. It's not just about cars. So we're going to be talking about and wanting to get input from all of you on sort of streets and what it feels to be on streets in the city. Do you feel safe as a pedestrian or a cyclist or a driver even? Going to look at trails as well, making sure we are looking at expanding and building on your trail system. Walking, biking, driving, and ride sharing. Some of these things that we'll talk about this week are a little bit unusual because of the whole lockdown, pandemic, COVID situation that's going on, and so things like ride sharing are a little less comfortable than they used to be. That's like Ubering or whatnot. We're going to talk about public transportation, which is really important in cities, especially when you're focused on equity, because we know that not everybody has access to a vehicle. And then we're going to talk about also connectivity and where you want to go, where it's easy to get from this place to that place, or where it's hard to get around. Accessibility and what it means if you are not able to walk or ride a bike easily or drive. And so how do we make sure that everyone can get around no matter what their mobility ability is? And then also maintenance. The city, once we build infrastructure, the city's somebody's got to take care of it. And so a lot of times the maintenance of roads and infrastructure is a topic of discussion. I'd like to, if we could quickly go through and just have everybody introduce themselves just real quick. Tell us your name and what brought you to the meeting today. And how do we, okay, so I'm going to call on people because I've got my screen here and that'll help us go in an order. First on my screen, I know it's different on everybody's screen. First on my screen is Ned.
Yeah, hey, I'm Ned Barrett. I'm the trail coordinator at Partners for Active Living, expanding the trail system in Spartanburg. So I feel like I'll likely have some input maybe beyond this meeting, but I wanted to make sure I got to this, and happy to answer any questions that you all have about where we are with trails and the like, but excited to hear this. So thank you all for doing this.
Awesome. Tamika Thompson. Hold on a second, you're muted, Tamika.
Yeah, I was saying I could not unmute. So My name is Tamika. I live here in Spartanburg. I am a mother and wife, and also I have extended family that's been here for about several decades. So this is important just for all of us, not just myself.
Great, thanks. Abigail? Becky, can you make it where everybody can unmute themselves? I think it may be locked.
Yeah, it was locked.
There you go, Abigail.
Hi, I'm Abigail Hoffman. I used to work with the city, and that's where I first heard about this process starting about a year ago, and currently work with In the Berg 864, which is daily morning email. So I'm here to participate, but also gather information so I can best relay it to the people who read our morning email.
Great, thanks.
Brian, both co-hosts need to enable that, so you have to do it as well. I did do it.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Make sure. Allow. So what the one that says mute participants upon entry? Unclick.
No. Go down to the bottom of the participant list, the 3 dots.
Yep.
Allow participants to unmute themselves.
Oh, yeah, you mean the one that says exactly what I wanted to do? Thanks.
Yep.
Oh man, it's early. I might have my camera on, but that doesn't mean I was ready. So next is, and by the way, if I mispronounce someone's name, I apologize. I'm doing my best here. Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Feather. I work at the Upstate South Carolina Alliance. I'm the Director of Research and Strategic Initiatives, but I'm also a longtime Spartanburg resident and am very interested in what's going on locally, but also how it relates to what we're experiencing on a regional level.
Thanks. All right, Maddie.
Hey everybody, I'm Maddie Courier. I work for Hope Center for Children in the fundraising department, but I'm also on the Bicycle and Pedestrian Commission. So I'm super passionate about trails and obviously a lot of what this session is going to be about. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Christopher George.
Hi,
Christopher.
Oh.
We see you.
I'm hearing.
Christopher, go ahead.
Christopher George. I'm communications manager with the city. I'm sorry, I'm getting some feedback. Is everybody able to hear me?
We hear you. You're good, Christopher. Thank you.
Okay.
Brittany.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Brittany Brandt. I live here in the city. I moved here in 2018 and bought my house, and I love it. I have 5-year-old twins, and so I'm super invested in being here and want to get more involved. And my background is in the nonprofit sector. So,
Great. Martin.
Good morning. I'm Lauren Rogers. I'm a Spartanburg, and I also sit on the city's design review board. So just interested to see the planning process from idea to conception. So just glad to be a part of the conversation.
Thank you. Annalise.
Hi, I'm Annalise Lewis. I'm the communication specialist for the city, and I'm really excited to get going and hear everybody's ideas.
Great. And Stephen?
Hi, Stephen Sykes. I'm a runner and a cyclist and part of the Spartanburg Running Club. So getting around safely on foot is pretty important to me. So
Great, thank you. Melissa.
Hi, I'm Melissa Early. I work at the Chapman Cultural Center. I am the Community Impact and Outreach Director there. And part of my job is to look at accessibility and equality as far as access to the arts. And a big part of that is transportation to the Chapman Cultural Center, to Mayfair Art Studios, and to other cultural events around the city. But I also live in the city and am very interested in this discussion personally.
Great, thanks. Jeff.
Hi, I'm Jeff Domeland, and I'm with the National Wellville team. And I'm a big fan of Spartanburg and really interested to see how this plan is coming together.
And Jeff, what you the national, what did you say?
Oh, Wellville team. Wellville is a national project. So Spartanburg's one of our communities.
Thank you. Marilyn. Go ahead, Marilyn. You're unmuted now, but we can't hear you. So we'll come back to you. Now, Natalia.
Awesome. I can't see myself, so I don't know what I look like right now. Oh, you can't even see me either. Let's do this. Hi, everybody. I'm Natalia Rosario. I am one of the city planners for the city of Spartanburg. I'm more than excited. I'm thrilled. This is my life. Thank you all for being here. Yay.
Great. Chris Johnson. Chris, you're muted still. All right, and I'll try Marilyn one more time. Marilyn, were you able to get your microphone to work?
Hello?
Hey, there we go.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, I forgot that this laptop has some mic problems.
That's a great mic. It sounds really clear. That's incredible.
I had to plug in my headphones. But hello, everybody. I'll show my face really fast. I am Marilyn. I'm actually the Community Development Vista working with the city. I've been in Spartanburg for about 2 months, and I'm really just interested in learning more about what the community sees and thinks about Spartanburg and how they want to move forward. So thank you for hosting.
Great. Well, thanks everyone for being here. So, and for telling us who you are. So we've heard a few things so far about transportation. We've heard people want to make the city much more pedestrian or bike friendly. We've heard that it's dangerous to cross the traffic rivers as they've been described. And we've heard people wanting to improve disabled accessibility to get downtown. We've heard that equity means accessibility, that a reliable vehicle makes it easy to get around. The bus would need to be more frequent for people to be able to take it to work. And people are looking for better biking lanes and bike paths, and would need to want to be able to bike from the west side to downtown. So those are some of the things that we've heard so far. And
Brian?
Yeah. Oh, hey, Martin.
We have Mitch Kennedy, Assistant City Manager here at CC Woodson.
Great. Hey, Mitch. All right, so we will we'll jump right in, and I will turn it over to all of you. Now, this is the time where you can't be bashful, and you can't worry about not knowing, being an expert in transportation. If you've ever walked around the city or ridden a bike or been in a car or moved anywhere, you are an expert on transportation in Spartanburg. Or you're at least more expert than I am. So who wants to go first? What do we need to know? What kinds of things, where we have roads where you don't feel comfortable walking or biking? Where do we have intersections that feel dangerous? Anything related to transportation. I'm gonna have to start calling on people. Hey, go ahead, Elizabeth.
As a former teacher, I know you got to speak up. And I'll address this, as somebody who moves around on foot. I run regularly. I ride my bike. I drive. I do all those things. And I think one of the things that I find most hinders me in moving around, especially as a vulnerable user, not so much and in a car, is people running red lights. A tremendous amount of bad driver behavior. That's really, really scary. And one thing that I think is telling about sort of that driver culture is that when you're around the rail trail, drivers are much, much more cognizant of pedestrians. They slow down, and this isn't universal, but they slow down at those crosswalks to look for people who are crossing. And then you go to some place like Henry Street and Church Street, and just crazy, ridiculous place for people to try to walk across the street, even constantly cars turning at you, cars pulling into the intersection, cars running red lights. I think even though I believe the infrastructure is probably at fault, I think there's a lot of bad driver behavior.
Yeah, well, that's one of those things that's a great segue for me to mention something I forgot to say at the beginning. So I mentioned that a comprehensive plan was a long-range vision for the future, and there are a number of things that the comprehensive plan can do, and then there are some things that it can't do. And so driver's ed is probably not one of them. But that said, right. By hearing you say that, and I don't say that to say that wasn't a good point. It was, and so now we say, okay, well, assuming that everyone's not going to go back and get a driving instructor, what do we do? What can we do with the design of the roads and the infrastructure to make sure that drivers are being safe, even if they're not good drivers or not paying attention to the cyclists or pedestrians?
And I think there's some encouraging infrastructure that encourages some of that too. So thank you for making that point more clear. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Elizabeth, I think you had your hand raised as well.
Yeah, this is something not necessarily about intersections, but more about the ways that we get to and from. My kids are 11 and 14, so they're a little older now, but when they were younger and in elementary school, I have always commuted to Greenville for work, which makes picking up kids after school and getting them to the places where they need to be challenging because I'm 45 minutes away. And one of the things that I always wished was available and was very frustrated because it wasn't is a bus, for instance, from Pine Street Elementary to the Chapman Cultural Center, where they could take advantage of some after school things. Just as a topic, so many of us, we in the upstate, it's a very regional labor market. A lot of people are commuting from Spartanburg to Greenville, from Greenville to Spartanburg. Those after school things for kids are really challenging for working moms and dads to get back to. And it very much limits what the kids are able to do when we have such wonderful things in Spartanburg that they could take advantage of. I have another, one of my children was doing after school theater at USC Upstate, and I looked everywhere for a way that she could get from Pine Street to USC Upstate in the afternoon. Is there a city bus? Is there a USC Upstate bus? Is there anything that that could work, and didn't find anything. So just something to think about as we move forward in the planning.
Yeah, that's a good point. And, a lot of times we hear people talk about safe routes to school, and but it's interesting to remember that, kids in an ideal world could walk around to places beyond just school, to other kind of things. So their parents don't have to take them everywhere all the time. So Tamika, I saw you had your hand raised.
Yeah, can I say one thing real quick, Brian, about Elizabeth's comment? Would you have been willing to have like a walking school bus if the infrastructure was there? Because if you go from Pine Street Elementary to the Chapman Cultural Center, it's about a 1.3 mile walk, which is about 20 minutes, but everybody's got pinned up energy after school.
Yeah.
Is that something that you would consider as a
I would
mom?
have thought that was like the world's greatest thing to offer to me at that point.
Gotcha.
That would have been great. Just to know that they can, have an adult help them to get from place to place would be ideal.
Great. Thanks. Good point, Chris. Tamika, go ahead.
So I definitely second Elizabeth's suggestion. I have preteens, and it is a bit of a nightmare to try and get your child from place to place throughout Spartanburg if you don't have transportation access. And even if you do have a car, your transportation is not always consistent. So having alternatives would be amazing. But as a child, well, my father passed in August. So I was a child of a disabled parent. And one of the things that I noticed in Spartanburg that like around some of the colleges, the sidewalks are much, much wider. That would be easier for someone in a wheelchair to be able to navigate. You don't see that consistency throughout the city. So a lot of times if you see people in wheelchairs or motorized scooters, you also see them trying to navigate curbs, sometimes getting stuck, sometimes needing someone to come and help them. So I just think the sidewalks that are around some of the colleges here need to maybe match up with the rest of the sidewalks for all of them to be expanded in some way that would be beneficial overall. It also allows for families who walk to be able to kind of walk together as opposed to kind of walking like ducks, which is really hard to do when you have small children.
Yeah, well, and also that's a great point. And I've been thinking too, sort of post-COVID, a lot of sidewalks are sort of standard 4 or 5 feet, 5 if you're lucky. And, if you had 6 foot as a minimum, or maybe 6.5 feet, it allowed people to walk next to each other or, not have to kind of get away from each other a little bit in distance as they walk and not have to have one person walking in the street.
Yes, I've also seen very dangerous scenarios, particularly with parents with strollers and sometimes multiple strollers trying to navigate on their own. And we see this a lot over here towards the east side. People trying to get to the Publix or trying to get to Fresh Markets with strollers. It's a danger, especially now that the high school is open and traffic is wildly crazy.
Great. And hey, Chris, by the way, since you are the topical expert here as the transportation engineer, please feel free. I'm not always used to having one of my expert team members on these meetings with me, so don't let me just move on if you have something to say. So thank you for jumping in a second ago.
Sure. And Tamika, I agree with your point. I think we've got some disproportionate widths. I am from Spartanburg. I'm actually in Spartanburg right now. And I know we have some 3-foot wide sidewalks in some places within the city, and that's pretty difficult to navigate, especially in a wheelchair or motorized scooter. So thank you for bringing that up.
3 feet, that's amazing. That's like, you nearly have to keep your arms out to make sure you don't go off the edge. All right. Anybody else have anything they want to throw out?
Yeah, I guess I want to agree with that and say that especially on the wider roads, you need the wider sidewalks to feel comfortable. Perhaps that's something that you could implement policy-wise, especially if there's redevelopment, is to widen the sidewalks in association with a redevelopment in certain areas to make it wider, to make it safer for people walking. But another issue is maintenance. A lot of times, like when I've been running out on sidewalks, is there's branches across the sidewalk and other obstacles that make it difficult to pass the sidewalk. And especially if you're in a wheelchair or something like that, that's going to be a huge impediment to getting around.
Yeah, that's a great point. Got to keep them clean. Does everybody know how to raise their hand? There's a raise hand function. If you want to do that, that also helps me know when you need to say something, but there's a group small enough you can just unmute and shout it out, no problem. All right. What about talking about the idea of equity, kind of how people can move around the city equitably? One of the things that we heard was the transportation, the transit system, the buses, and that there may be some issues with some of the routing or scheduling issues there. Does anybody have any insights to add to that? Go ahead, Maddie.
Hey, so I'm going to come at this from two different aspects, if you guys will bear with me. So personally, it's kind of off the last topic as well, joining in with this one. I live on the west side of Spartanburg. And, I say it in almost every planning meeting, we desperately need sidewalks or some kind of extended shoulder on South 29. I know it's a SCDOT road. I know that, it's something that they're not wanting to do, but the more push that we can get from the city and our citizens, the more likely they will be to change their mind at some point. But, as far as tying that in with the transportation aspect of it, I have people who walk through my neighborhood of Woodland Heights every day to get to their jobs further on the west side of Spartanburg. They're walking from the south side and some of the very beginning west side neighborhoods of the city. And instead of walking on 29, they're walking through our protected neighborhoods, which is great. But also, wouldn't it be better if they either A, had a protected way to do that meant that they didn't have to go, over a mile out of their way, or B, the reliable transportation as far as, the bus stops and everything goes, because there are not that many actual stops between the very, very western end of downtown versus like the first bus stop, which is I believe it's right at the intersection of the KFC where Holy Moly is and all that stuff. In addition to, none of those stops are actually protected stops. So I think that that's one area of concern. And then from my work perspective, again, I work for Hope Center for Children, and we have a transitional living program, and that house is out in Cedar Springs, and it is the last house in the city limits. One of the reasons why years ago we pushed for that house to be inside the city was that, we wanted to make sure that we were having those city resources accessible to us. It's about, a mile between where some of our youth and teens, homeless teens are able to actually access transportation from, where our residents would be at in the city. And it's not even just them I'm concerned about, it's the lack of transportation to places like the Housing Authority, or, you know, different various offices that are, you know, providing critical services for our community that, you know, people are not able to get to.
Yeah, great. And by the way, when you guys see me looking away, I'm taking notes here. So. Somebody has something?
This is Chauncey. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so in addition to like the critical services, like doctor's appointments, and being able to get to jobs, what about accessibility on public transportation to grocery stores and entertainment? How do people feel about that? People who live in Spartanburg.
Yeah, we've heard there's some
Do you
areas.
find that that's an issue, or? Yeah, I just wanted to hear about like do you find that that's an issue, particularly for people who may not have cars or live in food deserts?
Yeah, Melissa has her hand up. Go ahead, Melissa.
Hey, I would like to speak about the entertainment part of that. Again, I'm with the Chapman Cultural Center, and something that is frustrating for us is that, you know, we are an arts center, and part of that is performing arts. And if you want to go to the concert or performance, those are usually after 6 p.m., which is after the buses are running. So it's really difficult to get lower income people or people who have unreliable transportation to have the same access to those cultural amenities that everybody else has.
That's a great point. Do the cultural amenities you're talking about, are they things that you can do as a community member for free, or are they paid events?
It's both. It's both. For instance, Art Walk is every third Thursday, and it runs from 5 to 8 p.m. People can come in and see new exhibits, hear artist talks, have free wine and cheese and things like that. And if you don't have transportation, it's going to be really difficult to fit that in between just 5 and then, you know, hit your bus at, you know, before 6. So.
Yeah, well, that's good to know. Tamika's hands up.
So yeah, if you don't have a car here and you live in a food desert, and a lot of us do, getting to a grocery store is either darn near impossible, or it's going to take you several hours of your day to commit to in order to get food. And that's if you even have like a proper grocery store. A lot of places just have like a Family Dollar or a Dollar Tree, and the food there is either completely unhealthy or junk. I guess in both cases it's junk food. So if you need a certain type of diet for medical reasons, you're just kind of out of luck.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely something we're going to have to tackle here. I've heard that several times, and it's, as I said in the meeting last night, it's so tricky because, you know, we don't have a good way to make the stores come to the areas we want them to go to. And so figuring out like, how do we, you know, what are some creative and out of the box solutions to look at? What are, you know, one of the things I'm researching right now is best practices around the country for overcoming this. And I think that hopefully we're going to be able to come back to you all this week with some really big ideas. But you know, one thing I wonder is if, you know, in other countries, the idea of a big grocery store like we have in the US is unheard of. You know, it's all neighborhood scale, not even like a corner store with groceries. I'm talking like a pavilion, and it's like a mini farmer's market, and it happens every day, or at least, you know, once a week. It's, I think the thing that's really hard is, you know, if everyone doesn't participate though, you know, the profit margins for anybody who's wanting to run that kind of an endeavor are so slim that, you know, it really counts on everybody in the neighborhood kind of getting on board, and like, that's the way we do it. But how cool would it be for you guys to be like the city of these unique neighborhood markets, like old school style. I mean, that'd be pretty awesome. So I want to explore that a good bit, in some of those kind of looking at how people have always done it, before we had these giant grocery stores we all became dependent on, and now we're kind of stuck when they abandon a neighborhood, you know? So
maybe one of the ways to, so our family travels quite a bit pre-COVID, but maybe one of the ways to get something like the pavilion style, farm market styles that they have in places like Paris and in Cuba and in Australia is to allow self-employed people to also set up their stands for different things, for like whatever they're selling. That might be soap, that might be clothing items. We have a lot of tiny micro businesses here. So maybe one of the ways to get everyone to participate is to open that market up to various business owners and not just people selling food.
Tamika, that's a great idea. We have several of those here I live in Washington, D.C., and most of our farmers markets are coupled with people who are selling, you know, your shea butters or whatever other stuff they may have, jewelry making. So it's a way to kind of support artists and people who are making their own stuff as well as food. So that's kind of a big draw for people.
yeah, no, that's a good one. I think about Eastern Market, Chauncey, in DC, and it's like when I lived up there, we would go every Saturday. That was our ritual. We go to Eastern Market, eat a crab cake sandwich, and then walk around and look at all the vendors and, you know, buy some produce or whatever. And like that's a tourist attraction too, you know. So you actually have sort of bigger economic, citywide economic development benefits from that, and it also can serve the neighbors. Now, the problem is once it becomes a tourist attraction, it becomes more expensive, and so we have to kind of keep like the local discount kind of thing going on. Show your local card and get the real prices. But I think that there's something to be said for that, and also too, since COVID, so many people have lost their jobs, and we've got, you know, they don't have any other job prospects, and so what we're seeing across the country is one way or another, people are starting their own business, and they're saying, well, I just got to do something. And so sort of incubating that and providing opportunities for people to have that, take that entrepreneurial leap at a low cost is really important. And because we know that, especially at the beginning, it's really hard for anybody to make a living doing these, you know, kind of market venues as their, you know, what they're selling at that scale. You know, maybe it's something that the city could get involved in and make space available at no cost to people. And so they can come, so you're not having to give up part of your profits to pay for your stall or your spot at the market. So that's something to think about. You know, maybe all city parks could, we carve out a little area that's, you know, like the market spot or whatever. So I'm just shooting from the hip here. So anybody at the city who's going like, that's a terrible idea. Sorry. All right. Anybody have experience with the transit system? How's that? You know, I mentioned last night just some specific when we have people who really use the transit system a lot. You know, being able to know, you know, it could be a matter of 15 or 30 minutes of extended service on one side or the other can make a huge difference in somebody's life. Hello, Lawrence.
Good morning. How you doing? Sorry.
All right. Let's see. How's traffic in Spartanburg? You guys got some traffic issues?
It's not bad in my opinion compared to a lot of places I've been. We're pretty fortunate, I think. You know, there's certain times of the day where it gets tough in certain places. Like I think over on the east side where the new Spartan High is, I think that gets tough, especially when school lets out. And on the west side, similarly, in some of those areas near the mall. But I think overall, it's not something that's, you know, it's not in Atlanta. It's not even a Greenville. So I think it's manageable.
Okay. That's good. That's good that we're not too late, because as growth and development occurs over time, if you're not thoughtful about how you lay that out and how the transportation system functions, then you can become an Atlanta. And you know, I've never heard anybody, even those who love and live in Atlanta, say, "Oh yeah, I just love the traffic here." So what about, you got any, I think some of you said you were cyclists. Any thoughts on, do you feel safe cycling, or even if you're, you know, a hardcore expert who is fearless, you know, you see other people who aren't at your level, does it feel safe for most people to ride a bike around the city? Yeah, Maddie, go ahead.
No, I would absolutely say it does not. Now, we have a lot of trails that are fantastic, and, you know, basically riding off the road or in neighborhoods, it's not that bad. But I have not felt very safe riding within the city limits of Spartanburg at all. Most of the cyclists that I know, like the freewheelers and all, and groups like that, we will go ride at other places in the county because it's not so busy and stuff. But, you know, I think especially as we're looking at, you know, the future, like, you know, I'm one of those people who live on the west side that would absolutely love to ride my bike to work, but I just don't feel like I can do it. I just don't think that, you know, either taking John B. White or 29 is in anybody's best interest on a bicycle.
Yeah. Okay.
Patty, if you had a proper bicycle facility, or what would it look like to make you comfortable to make that commute by bike?
I think a protected bike lane, or any kind of, like, you know, a visual bike lane would be great. You know, I think some traffic calming would do a whole lot of good, especially right on those corridors where people just fly. It's really, you know, that area where you know, kind of you're past the west side of town, but you're not quite to downtown yet. People just fly through there. But, you know, I think it's wishful thinking right now to actually be thinking that, you know, we're going to have some kind of protected bike lane. But even if we could just get something like an extended shoulder, you know, although I'm not, you know, you're not supposed to ride on the shoulder, and I'm not going to, but it's just like, maybe if you have some kind of ability to, you know, dodge that stick in the road versus, you know, I could dodge on the shoulder versus dodging into traffic, that would probably be more helpful.
Of course, for sure.
I'm gonna bail out. Tamika, you get your hand up.
So we've visited several cities that have, like, it's just more biking accessible. And here, like, I feel comfortable riding with my husband, but I would not ride with my children. Like, I still haven't taken them out on a ride because it's just, people don't look for you. And I know we can't do anything about how people drive, but there's just not enough space. Like, you have to decide which one of your family members is going to be on the road in order to ride. And that's just not ideal. So a lot of times that's something that gets skipped. And while the rail trail is great, when you want to just be able to freely ride, it's supposed to be a bikeable city. And I don't feel like it's at that level quite yet. I think in certain parts, yes, but not enough where, again, where you can ride to work or ride to the store, or, you know, I'd like for my kids to be able to ride to the movies if they wanted to just go and hang out with their friends. But it's not safe. Like, I would be having 3,000 heart attacks at this point, and that may be the mom and me, and that's fine. But I just think there's alternatives or solutions that possibly could be coming up, and that I don't see bike lanes, but in like a few hit or miss places, it's not consistent. And I think the consistency is the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of places we work, one of the concepts that comes up that they really want to explore how to accomplish this goal, they talk about free range children. And so, like, your kids can just, you know, like they used to, get around, go do their thing, and, you know, teaching independence and kind of how to navigate the world and all of that. But at, you know, the most basic level, if you're not even sure that they can do it safely, forget all the mischief and trouble that they can get into themselves. But if it's, you got to worry about them being able to get on their bike or walk safely, then it sort of, you know, stifles that for sure. I see a hand up at CC Woodson. Go ahead. Martin or Chris, or whoever, anybody.
Hello?
Hey.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
No, now we can't hear you.
Oh. Hello?
Here we go. We hear you now.
All right, I want to make a point about pedestrian movement in our city. Maddie made a point earlier about the west side of the city. I live on the east side, and I walk quite frequently on the east side of town. The traffic rivers are quite challenging, but you have sidewalks everywhere. But I want to bring a point to the north side, south side connection. So we're at CC Woodson. It's only 2.7 miles from CC Woodson to north to the Dr. PK Gregg Center. Most people leaving here would travel Church Street. Well, that's not the safest route. It is actually Crescent to South Forest to Arch to Howard Street. But there is this disconnect due to, it goes all the way back to urban renewal. South Forest was a byproduct of the urban renewal. That big 4-lane road, you see no pedestrian traffic on Forest, but it's sidewalks and there's not a lot of movement, but it's the optics and the perception we have to overcome. So we need to take that stretch back. It actually also from the south side of the city, the housing authority is moving to the north side. That location is 2.5 miles from where we sit today at CC Woodson. So we have some signage issues, we have some perception issues, but we do have an opportunity to take that stretch of our community back. I traveled that route today when I was coming here, and there was very little traffic on that stretch of our city from the north side to the south side.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, you know, for so long, people had to walk around for everything or bike around. That was just the way you did it, or ride a horse, I guess. And then once we all got, you know, everybody started getting cars and things, you know, there was a point at which people said, well, why would you walk? You know, it was like a status symbol. And then when people were designing roads, they're like, well, we don't want to design roads for people to be around there because they'd be near the cars. And so, you know, now the roads are all designed so, you know, you don't feel comfortable being there. And so it's like nearly like this whole mind shift that has to happen to start to accomplish these goals. So,
Let me say this. That road was designed to separate.
Can you say that again? I didn't hear you.
South Forest was designed to separate communities. It clearly separated the Highland community from the downtown community.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for that. How about, yep.
Brian.
Yeah.
The Clemson University did a study of the west side of town.
Can you hear?
There we go.
Clemson University did a study of the west side of town, and they proposed a bike path that connected the Highway 29 to downtown. Might be worth looking at. That's on our website, and I'll send you a link.
Great. How about parking? Anybody have any feelings about parking? Is it easy to park around the city when you need to get somewhere? That must mean parking's not hard, because usually if it is, people jump right in.
Downtown parking is great, in my opinion. I've never had a problem finding a space, and the decks are all free in the evenings, and they're pretty conveniently located. So, I mean, again, I think we're pretty fortunate in that regard. I think, you know, we've generally been ahead of the curve on parking. And I think we're in a pretty good situation when it comes to that. There might be some improvements we can make accessibility wise to make sure that people in wheelchairs and whatnot have access. But yeah, overall, I think, especially in the downtown area, we're pretty good with parking.
Great. That's good to hear. Anybody else have any thoughts on any of the things we've been talking about? This is really encouraging. I mean, honestly, this is one of the meetings that usually gets in most cities just like lots of feedback, and it's not usually good. So you guys must be doing something right.
Can I go back to transit a little bit?
Yes, please.
I don't have any experience personally, partially because it's kind of so inconvenient right now to take it. But somebody mentioned really early on in this meeting about our regional economy. And that's a really good point. And that's a little beyond the scale of this planning process. But I think it's something that we could potentially address. I went to school at NC State, and the Triangle has a great regional collaboration when it comes to transit. Each of the cities up there, Durham, Raleigh, and Chapel Hill, all have their own transit systems within each of the cities. But then they have a regional transit agency that has like rapid buses that go between the cities with limited stops. So that helps people to get jobs in different cities and things like that, which could open up opportunities for people who currently, if they don't have access to a car, for instance, they couldn't take advantage of an opportunity at perhaps, a lot of the industrial jobs that we have are outside the city, they're in the Greer area. But if there was a robust regional transit system, then perhaps you could start making those connections.
Great. I think one of the big things that we need to keep in mind and really needs to become the new way of thinking, and I'm sure you guys are already thinking like this, but building on that, that there's two types of transportation really. There is recreation transportation and destination transportation. So walking, biking in particular, what I mean. So a lot of times in cities, people think about biking and walking as something that you would do for fun or for exercise, and don't think about it as something that you would do as a necessity. And so I think as long as we kind of keep that in mind, and we think about people moving around the city on foot and on bikes as easily as they do in cars or on a bus, or I should say, to make everything, all modes, buses, biking, and walking, as easy as driving, then that goes such a long way to solving so many issues in a city, for just quality of life for everyone, but especially when it comes to equity. So anybody else have any thoughts here? Tamika, there you go. Sorry, missed your hand up there.
You're fine. I was just texting with my uncles. They both live on the south side. They're both in their 70s. And I asked them kind of what their opinion was on the transportation situation as they've aged. And some of the things that they have stated, and I don't know if this is something that is pertaining particularly to this meeting, but they're saying in terms of the sidewalks, there's so many in the south side that could be repaved, or at least just torn out and put in new ones. And that there is a need for traffic calming elements, that there's not a lot of, sorry, I can't even read that part. That there's a need for traffic calming elements, and I don't know what that bit is, but also more covered bus stops, and to see if there is a possibility to put railings up for senior citizens who are beginning to lose mobility, so that they could walk without having the stigma of having to use a cane.
Got it.
Those are great.
Yeah, can I jump in really quick and just acknowledge that that's a great thing that you just did, Tamika, to help us reach out to more people who maybe aren't attending these meetings, is texting somebody else who may not jump on this to get their opinions as well. So thank you for doing that. Thanks for bringing 3 people to the table instead of just yourself.
Yeah, I agree with needing more shelters for the bus system. And I was just thinking, I feel like that'd be a interesting way to get perhaps like the Chapman Cultural Center involved in, and maybe other organizations, maybe they could partner with the city to help fund some of these shelters, and also maybe have people design them, artistically, which would be kind of interesting. It would make them nicer to look at, and then it would also help, get more people involved and maybe find some of the funding that was needed to provide more of these shelters.
Yeah, I mean, think about that. If like your public art was also your transportation system, that'd be pretty exciting, because it'd do two things. One, it'd beautify the city, but two, it would then bring attention to people using transit, and that's a kind of a cool and fun thing to do. So that's great. Melissa raised your hand.
So public art is what I do. We have actually looked for different projects that could, in general, we look for projects that are going to be good for Spartanburg overall. But transportation is one of those things that we have discussed, and we have talked about that exact idea. The problem is we haven't been able to find the funding to support that. So we just want you all to know that if anybody has any ideas, let us know. Maybe we have not been looking in the right places for that funding, but if we can find it, we can do it.
That's great. Maybe the first thing we could do is just have it be more crowdsourced art and non-professional, and we put up you see a lot of cities have these sort of chalkboards, and then people can sort of doodle on them and all that. I always wonder though about you can write anything you want to write or draw anything you want to draw. Is that going to be a problem? But there's some ways that I think people have been accomplishing goals like that as well. So that's great. I'm glad you guys are already thinking out of the box about these things and trying to tie things together, which is the beauty of a comprehensive plan. It allows you to know all the different things that the city's doing and thinking about, and then you can look for those synergies and connect them up. How about streets in your neighborhoods? With the exception of the most historic parts of any city, we tend to find that because a lot of the roads were built during a time when people were focused so much on cars, even in the neighborhoods, that the requirements for roads were pretty robust, and so you find really wide streets in neighborhoods, and then people are wonder why people are speeding through their neighborhoods. It's because if you don't feel like you need to drive slow and the street's not narrow, or you don't have on-street parking or street trees, it just psychologically makes you feel like it's a speedway. And then people are saying, well, we need to have, put traffic humps in or these other things. And, I always talk about, traffic humps are really just Band-Aids for poorly designed roads. And so do you feel like the neighborhood streets are designed appropriately, or can you tell a difference in the newer subdivisions or neighborhoods versus the historic neighborhood streets? Melissa raised her hand. Go ahead, Melissa.
Yeah, so as just a citizen, I live in Park Hills, and I live on a street that runs between Main Street and Reedville Road. And every single day, at least 3 or 4 times a day, I walk my dogs down that street, and either myself or one of my dogs nearly gets killed every time. We need more traffic. We need more speed bumps or ways of slowing traffic down on those small side streets. So that's a real issue in my neighborhood, at least.
Okay, great.
And I might add that we do have some sidewalks, but they are not well maintained and they are very narrow, and it depends on kind of whose house it's in front of. And they're not on both sides of the road.
Got it. Yeah, that's one of those things we're looking at, when you look at how infrastructure funds are distributed and are there usually it's certain areas or certain neighborhoods that aren't getting as much attention. I'm not seeing it so granular as a particular house has the better sidewalk than its neighbor. So that's a new one on me, but we'll have to look at that. How about Kim? Did you have anything to add about transportation?
I just want to say in my neighborhood, I live over where the old high school used to be. and we have no sidewalks. And there's more and more people out there walking in the evenings, especially, and maybe walking their dogs. And it can be hairy at times without having any sidewalks on either side.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm live in Converse Heights, and overall, it's a great place for walking and transportation. There are a couple of roads that are challenging. Brentwood is one, and Ivy is another, where there aren't sidewalks but are deep curves that are hard to see around. I used to live over on Brentwood, and I swear that there were folks that would use that as a drag racing street. In the middle of the night, you would hear engines roaring. Because it's curvy, and it's one of those streets that I just forbid my kids to either walk or bike down, because it scares the Jesus out of me.
Yeah.
But overall, Converse Heights is great. The light at Glendolyn is wonderfully timed, so that it's not too lingering. There's another one that is behind the park, closer to Pine Street, that seems extremely long, and there's never anybody there going in either direction. So that would be a light that, if it could be looked at to see if it could either be censored or maybe just shortened a little bit for ease of movement, that would be great.
Great, thanks. Kim, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, just some thoughts. So I live off of Lucerne Drive, and so the sidewalks and the traffic comment along Lucerne. I don't know how many years it's been since the traffic comment was put in, but it has certainly helped as Lucerne and Anita Drive did become kind of cut-throughs to get to EP Todd School. So we did notice a great deal of traffic calming and slower traffic, and some of that speeding when that happened. The intersection of Lucerne and Union, I think the signaling there works well if you're going to cross over to then walk along the rail trail. And in the other direction, going down towards Duncan Park, of course, those streets don't have sidewalks and things, and that's, you know, more kind of a natural walk. There are some traffic hazards there, but I think it's mainly because of people rushing to get maybe from the south side out to Southport Road.
All right, thank you. Abigail, what do you think? How's transportation going there?
I'll admit, I drive the majority of places. I have been working completely remote this entire pandemic time. But before that, I worked downtown, so I would drive downtown, park, walk around during the day, and then drive home. I also live in Converse Heights, so no complaints there about the sidewalk. The portion of Converse Heights I live in is actually near the old high school, but I live on a section that has sidewalks there, and I have great access to the Cottonwood Trail and the various like outdoor amenity trails there, rail trail as well. So personally, I don't have issues with transportation, but I also have access to a reliable car. I did have a previous car before the one that I purchased recently that was relatively unreliable and actually broke down, and I had to walk to work a few times downtown. So the only portions I would say there were as a pedestrian trying to cross Pine Street, but I feel like that's every pedestrian's issue with Pine Street is like we talked about earlier, just bad driver etiquette and not being aware of pedestrians. Pine Street not being very friendly for crossing, period. Whether you're coming from Converse Heights and trying to cross over to the rail trail, or if you're trying to travel down Pine Street or Union Street, really too, the sidewalks are relatively narrow or non-existent.
Great, thanks. Chris Johnson, you have any thoughts? or Jeff? All right. And this has been super helpful. This, you know, hearing these stories and your experiences and, you know, where you feel comfortable and don't feel comfortable and all of that is just, you know, the type of research that, you know, it doesn't matter if you're out there watching people move around the city, you don't know how they're feeling. And I think people underestimate how much how you feel influences your decisions about how you move. So thank you for sharing. We have another meeting coming up at, was it 10:30? 11:30, sorry, your time in Central. And that is about economy and business development. So feel free to hop on that one, and please just, you know, each time we do these, I make the plea for you to let other people know. Just text everybody you know right now, put it on any social media you have. You know, we're planning the future of the city. No joke. Like, and so for there to be, what is it, 20 of you on here maybe, is great. And I'm so thankful for each one of you and your valuable insights. But I know that the day will come when somebody's going to say, well, how can you plan the future of a city when only a handful of, you know, a small percentage of the population participated? And so we want to make sure that we can, you know, proudly say we actually had a lot of people participate. And so when you leave here, you know, go ask people, why didn't you jump on? What kept you from coming and participating? And we need to know that too. So we try to do these meetings at different times, and you know, even though the meetings have different topics, you know, if somebody jumps on who missed the transportation meeting but can make it at the economic meeting, and you know, want to talk about some transportation stuff, that's okay too. And then we have, of course, our virtual open studio that's going all day long. People can drop in there at any time and give us feedback as well. But until the next time I see you all, thank you so much for your participation. Yeah, Martin, go ahead.
Brian, before we close, one of the items we forgot to do last night, and we are doing at the end of each session, is we're having a drawing for QT gift card, $25 gift card, and we're giving away 2 at each end of each session, so we could do that now.
Oh, great.
And let folks know who the winners are. I have 13 names in the drawing, and I could do that now, and then we can also announce for last night's winners.
Awesome. Let's do it. This is
Okay.
exciting. Drum roll.
So the first person is Lawrence Johnson. First winner is Lawrence Johnson.
Lawrence Johnson. I have Lawrence Armstrong. Is there a Lawrence Johnson too?
Sorry, Lawrence Armstrong.
There we go. Hey, Lawrence. All right.
All right. Thank you.
And we'll reach out to you to get to your QT card. And then the next person is Elizabeth Feather.
Elizabeth.
Yay, thank you.
That's funny. You guys are right next to each other on my screen. So winners there.
And then for last night's winners, we have Brad Steinecke.
Great. Congratulations, Brad.
And Ingrid Norris.
Awesome.
Those were last night's winners.
This is great. I love this, having a drawing at the end of each meeting. It makes it so much more interesting, a good way to close it out. We don't always get to do that. So thank you for that, Martin. All right. Well, come back to the next meeting for your chance to win again and give us good input. We're really the winners here. Hope to see you all soon.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.